Hi, and welcome to Critical Analysis Workshop. This is the second part of our genre module for the first year series for the writing workshops. No doubt by this point you've watched the summary workshop and have a much firmer understanding of the principles of comprehensive, accurate, and brief writing that's independent and neutral, right? Cabin. So that should be a pretty familiar takeaway, no matter how recently or not so recently you've watched and participated in that workshop. This workshop builds, obviously, from the idea of summary and distinguishes itself against the idea of what summary is. So during the course of this workshop, we're going to talk about reading as a concept beyond looking at words on a page and finding meaning, working towards meaning, right? This idea of how do we look at something and know what it means. For example, does a stop sign actually stop you? Or is your reading the stop sign stop you? Or is it you who's finding the meaning and doing something in response to it? So for our purposes, when it comes to critical analysis, we're talking about that next step beyond just summarizing something. So if you feel like you can read a text and say, I think that the author is doing this and saying this in order to do these things, great. The sky is blue, right? We're able to talk about things and agree on things and create a sort of stasis and talk about things in a very diplomatic way because we agree on basic foundational ideas. The next step, though, is to take your observation about that and be critical of it. And critical, you shouldn't think of as a pejorative or having a negative connotation. Critical just means to look at something finely, right? To hold your eye up to it closely and see how it works and offer an observation about it in terms of judgment or an opinion about it to a certain degree. We'll fine-tooth that a little bit, though. So we kind of do a little bit of a refresher here. The idea of a summary is the idea of inventory. So we as humans are so smart and our neurons fire so quickly that we often compress this action of reading into one, or what seems like one trajectory, where really we're looking at something, we're seeing that thing, we're putting the pieces together mentally, we're understanding how they relate, and then we're acting in response to that. So if you think about it, because of the way in which your brain operates so quickly, everything seems so compressed. The purpose of this conversation for talking about summary critical analysis is to distinguish the two and kind of slow things down for a moment, to show you that you're always being critical, you're always deciding. For example, to take the stop sign example, when you roll up to a stop sign, if you think about stopping, coming to a complete stop, rolling through, or seeing someone else do the same, being critical of those things. Whenever you're being really clever and you find a technicality in the syllabus you bring up to your instructor, those ideas of being critical because you've noticed something that's conflicted or emergent, right? So being able to summarize a text, finding all of its parts, it's not exhaustive, right? You're not trying to find every single part that makes up something. It's impossible. You're limited by time and space. But being able to inventory a text. So building from the theme in the first module on summary, we talk about paintings, these visual ideas of being able to summarize and analyze things, finding meaning. Art's a great example because art means many things to many people, so its meaning is manifold, right? So if we wanted to summarize this text, we could do that, right? We could make a list of its features. We could talk about what it is. That's not to say what it means, right? We don't get to that level just yet. That's the second step. That's the analysis. So that's just a Greek word meaning to take something apart. Think about a watch. Have you ever taken a watch apart or an iPhone? If you've seen a teardown like that, go online, just Google iPhone teardown. You'll find someone who's taken apart this many pieces of small electronics and gearing and laying it out so you can actually look at it and see how do these things actually fit together. That's analysis. It's taking it apart, finding out how those things actually work. So when you look at a painting, and I ask you, how does this painting make you feel or what does it mean to you? You might say something, oh, it means love, or it means something weird, I don't really know. There's two people with bags over their heads. Well, why do you think that? How does it make you do that? That's the question you're getting at with how. But before we get on any further, let's take a minute just to make sure that we're on the same page, right? Kind of a stasis question here. How does analysis differ from summary? So we talked about building from summary towards analysis. Take a minute here to reflect and to note, how do you see analysis as being different from summary in terms of the things we just discussed on the previous slide? Now that you've done that, let's do a walkthrough, actually, of this reading. So it's really easy for us to look at this summary of, or rather this painting by René Magritte. You know, The Lovers, Benamont, 1928. He actually created 4 of these tableaus of these 2 individuals in various embraces, very akin to this one, with different backgrounds. Okay, so we're only going to look at one of these, but you can know that there actually are 4 tableaux. So we take it apart. We ask what questions? What is this made of? How does it work? And this is kind of easy to point out, right? So we get 2 figures. We get these 2 figures here. And they're really easy to see. Figure 1, figure 2. We assume one's a man, I think, because we see this tie, this cravat, this black suit. We see this woman, we think, because of the arm, the shoulder, the bare shoulder shown here. But do we know for sure that they are man or woman? We don't really know that yet. That requires an extra layer of reading, an analysis, right? All we're doing is making a list. Person, number 1, black suit. Person, number 2, and what we're imagining is a dress. How about the rest of it, though, right? You get this idea of a painting, maybe black clouds over here in the background. I'm not sure. This kind of homey touch right here, this crown molding. Dark clouds in the background, some sort of otherwise just mundane features of being in a home, perhaps. How do you read this? Well, we're not quite there again yet. So we agree that I think that we see 2 figures. We see a masculine and feminine figure, dark clouds or some sort of black background, some sort of lighter foreground, some shadowing making it look like they're actually kissing or embracing through these materials. Oh yeah, and there are some sort of fabrics over their heads. That seems to be the most dominant part of this figure, right? So when we go forward, we ask the question then, well, what does the painting mean? More importantly, how does it mean that? It's really easy to have a gut reaction and say, I think it means love. I think it means weird or creepy. I'm not sure. Take a moment to think about what does this painting not mean to you personally per se, but how do you think it means? What is it doing? How is it operating? Does it have any significance or symbols that you can find in it? Maybe it's some sort of hiding or shame, right? Some sort of prophylaxis. Or maybe it's something to do with the blindness of love. We can't see their faces. So what are we doing now by asking these kinds of questions? Well, on one hand, we're participating in sort of like a literary critique, right? We're asking these questions that you might ask in a lit class. But on the other hand, we're also just asking things about how is it working? That right there is analysis. You're getting at the how does it work aspect of it. You're taking it apart to see how do these cogs interlink? How do they move things so that you're able to understand them? Because really, at the end of the day, it's just a painting with some colors on it that look like people, and they're not doing anything. That meaning that you're finding is inside of your ability to make these connections. And so when you're asking these questions, these how questions, you're asking some very important critical analysis questions that are getting towards your asking of a thesis. So what you want to do then is think of this idea of a claim. And we differentiate summary claims from analytic claims with a pretty simple litmus test. Can you disagree with it? This is one simple way of doing it, right? So you kind of have the shibboleth moment of, let's say, I like pizza and I think it's the greatest food on earth. You could disagree with me, I imagine, but you're not really going to have much of a position with me because it's my opinion. We don't really disagree with those kinds of things, right? That's not really being anything but summary. The sky outside is, well, it's gray now. I might say blue otherwise. These are summary statements. They're descriptive. They answer to the category of what that we talked about in the summary workshop. For the analytical model, though, we talk more about how. How does this thing happen? How does it work? How does it, think about science, right? Offering a hypothesis. How do you know that? What is the evidence you're drawing on? What connections do you see? What patterns do you note here? And so I ask the question, what does the painting mean? And any response you're going to offer is going to be analytical because you're drawing now on certain features in your mind that you're going to try to make explicit. So take a moment. Write down, jot down what you think the sentence means. Do a complete sentence. You're going to keep these notes for later anyway for your reflections as you reflect on these workshops. But consider, what does the thing do? How does it mean? And we're just talking about this painting, right? What does it mean to you? So take a minute and answer that question. Now, you might have remarked or written down or jotted down any number of things, but the point is your observations about this piece beyond its statement of it's made of these smaller features is analytic because you're taking things and putting them into conversation. In terms of writing a critical analysis piece or building towards beyond your summaries, right? Putting text into conversations, You're going to read, for example, 2 texts in each module at least, and talk about how they inform one another, how they inform you. Not all texts are, say, accurate, right? You don't have to believe them if someone's writing on something and you're putting them into conversation with another one and into conversation with yourself. So you want to be critical of them. There's nothing wrong with being doubtful or doubting something, being more skeptical, as it were, of a text. That's being critical. So you can have observations about a text, of its shortcomings as well as of its strengths. So when you're writing here, you're thinking about things, you're trying to get to this point of argument. And we don't want to argue about whether the sky is blue. We could hash out what hexadecimal color that is. We could talk about why the sky is blue. But these are more towards the ideas of a scientific actuality that we don't really want to get into. We want to talk more instead about the observations you're drawing and how they connect to form meaning in a greater conversation that we can evaluate and talk about in terms of why bother having that observation. Why does it matter, for example, that this painting mean anything at all? We can talk about that in the greater scheme of things in terms of art criticism. Maybe you've taken a humanities class. Maybe you've taken an art appreciation class. Art is and art means, but we can talk about that and find meaning in a greater sense for it.